This is Nigel at Weather Wars International, and I have Rick Duarte here with me, and we are going to be talking today. This interview is on the subject, predicting the future, weather warfare, and predictive programming. And so to talk to us tonight on that subject is the Professor Rick Duarte. So good evening, Rick.
Hello, Professor Gray. How are you tonight?
Very good. Yeah, we haven't been blown off the map yet.
Yeah. They're working on it over here on the States with a couple of hurricanes they got going on.
Oh, yeah.
So, and there's more to back that up. So stay tuned. We still have about another 10 weeks to go in the hurricane season over here. So it's going to be very interesting times for sure.
Yeah, I see a lot of posts coming through of tropical storms. You just had a whole line of them. I'm like, when I saw them getting posted, I'm like, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, there's been like just in the Atlantic, well, I could say the Atlantic storm basin, as well as off the coast of Mexico, there's been 6. But you take a look at the typhoons over in the Asia, and there's been 3 or 4 just in the past month alone. So yeah, it's been a very active year to say the least. It's above average, for a typical hurricane season for sure.
Right. So what can you tell us about weather warfare and predictive programming?
Well, first of all, you can almost predict the future. It's somewhat like what you did a few years back, with the earthquake down there in, Christchurch, New Zealand.
Kaikoura.
There's certain things.
Yeah.
I'm sorry? Kaikoura.
Kaikoura, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's similar to that, but with regards to predicting the future, you may not be able to predict the exact date or the time a certain event will come up, but you might be able to predict what will or may happen in the future based upon what you see in the media. Now, before I elaborate on that any further, you got to give some definitions or descriptions of what we're talking about here. So to begin with, let's describe what weather warfare is. And this information will be contained in the show notes as well too. So weather warfare can be best described as the government's use of current technology to bring about catastrophic weather events such as floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, etc., in order to change or control its population, or as a means of direct weather warfare to conquer another nation in order to I'm sorry, I can't read my own writing, so bear with me. Okay, excuse me. I'll start that again. Weather warfare can be best described as the government's use of current technology to bring about catastrophic weather events, such as floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, etc., in order to change or control its population, or as a means of direct weather warfare to conquer another nation in order to plunder that nation's valuable resources, such as gold and oil, etc. Okay?
Yep.
So that's the definition of, or a description of what weather warfare actually is and how it's being used today.
That's a very good definition there too.
Okay, good. I'm glad you like it. It makes sense. It made sense to me, at least. That's good. Excuse me 1 second. Now, what is predictive programming? Well, quite simply, predictive programming is a very subtle form of psychological conditioning provided by the media to acquaint the public with planned societal changes to be implemented by the powers that be, if you will, the merchants of chaos. Okay? Which is primarily done, via our governments. But there's other men behind the scenes which have evil intentions, which we'll call the merchants of chaos. Okay? Now, to start off, we have to address the sheeples of the earth. And first and foremost is what George Carlin has said repeatedly over the years prior to his, passing a little over a year ago. His first rule is don't trust the government. His second rule was the same as the first. Don't trust the government, okay? Don't believe what the government tells you. And definitely don't believe what the media is telling you, because that's where they get it from. They're just a spokesperson for our government as far as that goes. Now, getting into the part of programming, what is predictive programming? I've already described that. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Some means of predictive programming, we've all seen it. We might not have recognized it as such because it is very subtle. It's what some people would call, it registers in the subconscious part of the mind, but it doesn't really, make a person cognite or understand at that particular time that he sees it, that it has something to do with the future. That's all. Okay. So the sources of some of that predictive programming you'll see in TV shows. You'll definitely see it at the movies. There's no doubt about that. You'll see it on the evening news broadcast. You'll see it or hear about it on the radio. You'll see it in comic books, video games, memes, whether they be on Twitter or Facebook. You'll see it in magazines. And you'll especially see it in commercials, TV commercials. They give a lot away, but the person is really who's not aware won't see what's going on. And I used to be one of those people as well too. Now, what spawned tonight's episode of Predicting the Future, Weather Warfare and Predictive Programming, was a video I came across on all things of September 11th. And that video is called that video is called 9/11 and Predictive Programming. What is predictive programming? And it was a rather lengthy film, but it was well worth watching. And it was amazing to me, and I shared it with you, and I think you found it, pretty astounding as well too, as well as your wife. That there were so many clues and foreshadowing of what was going to happen on 9/11/2001. Now, even though they didn't say it was going to happen in 2001, they did say in advance, 40 years in advance, that it was going to happen on 9/11. 40 years. And in this video, which will be in the show notes, you can access it and watch it. And I do recommend that you do, so you have a little bit of understanding on how this predictive programming comes into play. So you're aware, and you might be able to see some things in the future that may or may not happen. But trust me, There's a reason Hollywood puts this stuff out, okay? And it's not only to make a buck, it's also to send out a message as well, too. Um, I lost a little bit of my train of thought there, Kiwi.
Well, I certainly can, you know, watching that video was,
Good.
I think for us, it was when we were watching it, it was like, I knew some of the clips I'd actually seen before, in fact, but seeing them all put together and a lot more than I'd ever seen, and we're just sitting there having this oh my god moment, continuous,
Right.
as at the sheer volume of predictive programming that was presented there. It was a huge amount. It's just amazing.
It was. And what was even more amazing, not even more amazing, but just as amazing, was how much predictive programming of 9/11 came out in the movie Back to the Future.
Yeah.
That was really astounding. You know, when I watched Back to the Future, I love that movie, but everything that they showed in there went right over my head.
Yeah, we've tagged that one to watch it again.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So anyway, moving right along, when we talk about, let's say, for instance, memes, you know, one of the biggest promotion that's going on here, at least in the United States, and I'm going to assume it's going worldwide as well too, is this thing, what they call climate change. Okay, they're basing everything on climate change. Well, probably I think sometime this year, I posted a meme. You know, climate change was climate. You know, climate change has been going on for, like, if you will, for over 4.5 billion years on this planet. The climate's always going to change. Okay, there's no doubt about it. So, you know, when the government and the media comes out and talks about climate change, I don't buy this.
It's about as clear as saying war on terror.
Well, true. That's true. And I was going to tie that in as well too, but you covered it. You know, war on terror. I mean, there's always.
And when you think about it, hell, every day the climate changes.
Well, it does, and it changes by the hour as well too.
Sure.
You know that's why you have low temperatures in the morning and high temperatures in the afternoon. The day might start out sunny, the afternoon it turns out cloudy. So you have climate change. You go down the street a couple miles, and they've got something totally different. So it's like, well, I'm not going to get into that with the sheeple of the earth. Okay. But then after I published that, I did post a meme. Climate change is the cover story for weather modification and industrial pollution, which is what it is. Pure and simple. I don't need to elaborate on that. Now, as far as specifics go, with regards to what have we seen initially with regards to movies that depict weather warfare. Okay.
Yep.
And one a lot of people remember at least by title and some of the advertising that came through, was a 2018 movie called Geostorm. which, just looking at, just from watching the trailer several times, I had absolutely no interest in it.
I thought the trailer was better than the movie.
You and me both. I never watched the movie. It's just like what they presented was not what you would call a Spielberg quality film.
No.
It wasn't even close. It was, they talk about, A movies or B movies. I think this had to be an F movie as far as that goes. It was it really flunked big time. But
yeah, the plot sucked.
it really did. It really did. And so yeah, okay, good. You're right. And so what it had to do was a weather satellite had malfunctioned and created these catastrophic weather events all over the world. Places in Europe would go, to an instant freeze like it did during the Ice Age, 10,000 years ago. People would be frozen in the streets. Hurricanes would just happen one after the other, just like bowling, in the game of bowling. Okay, you throw the pins down, you knock them down, here comes another hurricane, which is your bowling ball, okay? Tornadoes, rain, floods, the whole 9 yards. So that was it. Then we have, it's called the big one, the 9.0 earthquake, which has to do with Cascadia subduction zone off the coast of California. The other was the mega tsunami. Interestingly enough, it not only had to do with the tsunami that resulted from the 9.0 earthquake in California, but there was another version of that mega tsunami that was done for London, England as well too.
Yeah.
In
fact, they had a whole TV series that was based on the movie as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're gonna have to tell me more about that in just a minute. I'm ready to wrap this up a little bit.
Yep.
Then while I was doing my research, interestingly enough, there was a movie called Tidal Wave, 2009. It was a Japanese movie. And interestingly enough, 2 years later, of course, they get that 9.0 earthquake and the mega tsunami, which wiped out somewhere in excess of 250,000 people. A couple more to go through here. Category 6, movie called Day of Destruction, where 3 tornadoes merged to form one mega tornado in EF6, which wiped out Chicago, and that was followed by Category 7, End of the World, which is a Category 7 Hurricane Eduardo, which hit Washington, D.C. and New York City. And that pretty much wraps it up. It gives you an idea of just a little bit that I've uncovered. I wasn't going to go through everything. If I had gone through everything and looked at, video games, magazine articles, and the whole 9 yards, I'd be doing months of research on that. I'm not going to waste my time, but all the evidence is there. Now, what rabbit they're going to pull out of their hat, I don't know. But it's all there. It's been presented in the past. I can only tell you where we are in present time. I can't really predict the future, but when the future does happen, I'll probably be able to tie that back into what was foreshadowed before time. Okay? And it's real simple. It really is. And we'll have no way of knowing until it happens, just like with 9/11. But go ahead, you take over at this particular point, Nigel.
Well, it is an interesting thing, and getting into I say a little bit into at least the more philosophical side of that, and that is that reality is simply that which is agreed upon by one or more people. Now, if you have one person who believes they see a wall in front of them, and it's a blue wall, for example, and they agree that they believe they see that, then that is their reality. If they then tell another person there is a blue wall there, and then that other person agrees with them, then they have established a more general reality. If the other person disagrees with them, well, you just have two people who are in disagreement with each other because each has their own reality. But by the time a third or fourth person comes along, and we start to see this change of what is reality, you see. And this is kind of interesting, because what happens is if one person says, well, there's a blue wall, and we have three other people, and they go, hold on a moment, that's a tree you're looking at there.
Right.
Then suddenly this one person saying that's a blue wall becomes the crazy one, right? Because the other three people see a tree. So the prevailing reality is the one that gets held onto, and anyone who falls out of the prevailing reality becomes the crazy one. In other words, they are insane. So insanity is only defined really along those rules. Is does somebody fit into the prevailing reality, or do they disagree with it? If they disagree with the prevailing reality, they're called insane. They're called the crazy, the nut job, all of the other character assassination things that we've got going on. Actually, that's not it at all. He's just has another reality from the other three guys in the room. That's the simplicity of it. Now, it gets an awful, we can go into that whole subject a lot more, because it can get a lot more complicated than that, because, in order to have any kind of sort of society going on, you've got to have some established reality, that some sort of established agreements to get a functional kind of society, to get things where things can function, because it's a little bit difficult when everyone has a different idea of what's going on. So anyway, that's just a little philosophical diversion there.
Well, that's good. This what you're saying is this all ties in with predictive programming. It really does. And to just elaborate, or to let's say add on to what you've already said with regards to the blue wall. Now, I've used this over the years, and the last time I used it was with my wife, Lynn, who's since deceased a little over a year and a half ago. And I was telling her about reality, okay? And first of all, reality, when you're dealing with insanity, as you mentioned, insanity is basically when your reality differs with somebody else, okay? As soon as your reality differs with what their reality is, you're insane. And it can be reversed as well, too. But the fact of the matter is,
Oh, we just lost you there for a moment. Hello? Yeah. Oh, showing internet. Hold on. Rick, you there?
yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. continue. There's a bit of an internet break.
Okay, I got that. So where did I leave off? I know where I left off, but where did you leave off in the show?
Oh, we're still going.
I know, but what I'm saying, what I was talking about, insanity.
Yeah, you were saying that when there's two people who have a different reality, that one can be called insane, and you know, it can go either way because the other person could be called insane and so forth.
As well, yeah, exactly. So that's all insanity is the differences of reality. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was talking about my wife Lynn, who passed away a year and a half ago, and I was explaining to her. I was trying to explain to her differences in reality. You know, my reality versus her reality. I said, you know, you've lived one life, I've lived another. You've experienced things, I've experienced things. Okay? Whether they're right or wrong doesn't make any difference. It has to do with our experience of the lives that we had led. And, you know, if you were, and I told Lynn, I said, if you and I were to walk hand in hand together on a beach for, let's say, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, and then we came back home, had dinner, then we discussed the day of our walk on the beach. Well, my reality of our walk on the beach will be somewhat different from your reality on the beach. Because yep. I'm here, let's say on the right-hand side, close to the ocean, I'm seeing things in front of me to the right of me, and you're on the left-hand side seeing things in front of you to the left of you. So you're going to have a different viewpoint. I said, I can see, you know, basically a sunny sky over here. I can hear calm waters of the ocean lapping against the sand. And you can look over here and you can see the clouds gathering for a storm coming, dogs and some people sunbathing.
Sure.
I said, so here you have two different realities. And yeah. I said, that's as simple as it is. So who's right, who's wrong? The point is, nobody's right and nobody's wrong. The fact of the matter is, your reality is based upon what you perceived. And that's all there is to it. So for some psychologist or psychiatrist or some even relative, which I have several of, okay, you know, they'll tell you you're absolutely nuts. You know, you're crazy. You're insane. It's like, well, you haven't lived my life. You haven't seen what I've seen. You haven't experienced what I've experienced. You haven't read what I've read. Of course, it's going to be foreign to you. You know, it's like I might as well be an alien from another planet. But by no means,
yeah,
you know, by no means is that any reason to discount another person's reality. I have never done that in my entire life. In fact, I really listen intently to other people's realities because they've experienced something I've never been through. And I'll give you an example of that. It was quite innocent. I was in, let's see, what grade was I in? I was in 4th grade. I was about 9, 10 years old, going to Catholic school. And it was after school. And my brother Bruce, who's about 2 years younger than myself, and I were walking home. I was in the front, and Bruce was walking next to another fellow who I didn't know, but somebody he had met in class that was a friend of his. He was walking with him and talking with him. But interestingly enough, this kid had an earplug attached to an ear with a wire that went down to something into his front pocket.
Yeah.
At that particular time, I didn't know anything about hearing aids. And I turned around and said, "What channel do you have it on?" I'm serious. You know, it's funny, but Bruce, my brother, was like, "Oh no, Rick, don't say that." You know, but the guy had a hearing aid on. And the kid, you know, he just said, "Oh, it's a hearing aid because I have difficulty hearing." I thought, "Oh, okay, got that." Well, I didn't know. You know, they're talking about two different realities. I said, "Oh, okay, that's how hearing aids, that's how they worked back there in the early 60s. You know, now you just throw some plugs in there and away you go. You got a hearing as far as that goes." But I mean, that has a lot to do with reality, you know. And if more people would wake up, there'd probably be a lot less insanity on this planet and a lot more, you know, sanity. Things can get done. And people should not, you know, buy into, you know, a person, here's a real big problem I have with people. I'm guilty of this as well, too, as well as everybody else. But I tend to put it more at bay than anybody else. And you as well, too, Nigel, is that when a question is posed or an issue, there's other things that I want to say. When something comes up that you have a question behind, an individual always looks for an answer to fill that vacuum. Because the universe hates a vacuum. It's got to fill it. And whatever that first thing is to fill the vacuum is what that person takes with them for the rest of their lives. Okay? Going back to 9/11. Two planes, you know, hit the World Trade Center on 9/11, 2001. And that's all they remember because that's all they saw and that's all they know about. They didn't investigate it any further. So they hold on to that as a truth and try to pry those people of that reality is like trying to chisel granite. It's not going to happen. It really isn't, you know? And so you don't waste too much time with those people. But those people like you and I and others that are watching this video, like, we're willing to open our minds and say, maybe, just maybe, what I've heard and believed all this time may not be true. Let me find out for myself whether it's true or not. And that's where it comes into play, which is called false data stripping. People would be amazed on how much false data they've accumulated over the course of a lifetime. That if they knew the truth about a particular subject, they could actually raise not only their IQ, which is your intelligence quotient, but you'll also be able to make a person actually feel better in life about himself. And that comes through, let's say, you know, a personality analysis or test where you cover 10 different categories, you know, of a person's personality dealing with happiness and reality and that sort of thing. And you'll find the more false data that's stripped, the more intelligent the person becomes and the happier the person becomes because they're not living down in the swamp anymore.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Actually, at one stage, I was doing a bit of tutoring on some guys who were semi-literate, and I recall one guy who I cleared up the word TV. He didn't know what TV meant.
Okay.
He thought a TV was a TV, right?
Right.
But he'd never connected the TV with the word television.
Right.
Now, to you and I, it just seems very, very simple. But what was more interesting to me was how much happier he was once he understood that TV actually was short for television. And it just cleared it up for him, and he was just like, oh yeah, okay, right. Like, and he felt more, he was calmer, he was happier, and it sounds like ridiculous. Like, how could anyone possibly be happier by finding that out? But it did, you know.
Well, yeah, and I believe that because that's happened to me as well too. Some really simple words changed my life as well too. I'm not gonna get into that right now, but I can tell you, here's something that I've noticed in my reality. Now, we've never discussed this, Nigel, but when I look at a person, okay, initially, of course, I always look at their face, and I find the more furrows or ridges that the person has on their forehead, the more misunderstood words that person has. And what's very interesting is, as those misunderstood words are now understood words, the less the furrows become. And I've seen this before in the past, and I'm going back almost 30 years ago, where the person cleared up a lot of words, word clearing. Okay?
Sure.
And he did, and I was good friends with this guy. His name is Clay. Okay? And this is back in Washington, D.C. And we got along real great. Really great guy. Really strong being. Created a lot of effects over time. But anyway, I saw him a couple days later, and all the furrows and the wrinkles that he had in his forehead that went from the eyebrows all the way to the top of the forehead were completely smooth. They were gone. He didn't even realize it. His complexion was totally smooth. He had the face of a baby. You couldn't find a wrinkle on this guy's face. And I brought, yeah, which is true. Which is true. You clear all that crap out, and it's amazing. But I look at a person's forehead, I look at a person's forehead, and I know who I'm dealing with immediately. And obviously, depending upon whether I want to know this person or get involved with this person, will depend upon how I deal with him. If he's got a lot of furrows, I'll be gentle. I'll try to erase a few of those furrows a little bit at a time. I'm not going to clean up his face in a heartbeat. He'll have a freaking heart attack, But and the less furrows, like yourself and like myself, well, it tells you we've cleared up a lot of things in our lifetime, for sure. So that's why we don't have the furrows. We don't.
Sure.
So that's something to mention too.
Now getting back to weather prediction, weather wars prediction. You were mentioning about the James Bond movies as well.
Yeah. Now, I only saw maybe one or two of those shows over the years. I was too busy as a young kid. This is in the 60s. I was too involved in just sports and being outside. My father was more into that than I was. He'd go to the movies. He read the books, then went to the movies. And he had a whole collection of James Bond books in the house. I do remember that. But you and your wife have seen a lot more videos than I have. And you can probably delve into that a little bit more than I can.
Well, I'm just trying to remember which one it was. There was the one with the laser beam. God.
Yeah, I don't remember. Hey, Kiwi, put the video on hold right now. Give me a couple minutes.
Yep. Okay, so we're back on continuing with this and we're wrapping up this, and so I'll hand this over to you again, Rick, to continue.
Yeah, my final comments are obviously, if you didn't get everything that we've discussed in this show, watch it over again. You're going to learn something new. And in closing, something I would like to say is that we were talking about, individuals' realities. And I want to bring up the subject of Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was the former vice president under George H.W. Bush. Now, with regards to him and the furrows on his forehead, of which he had plenty, he had so many furrows, he looked like an armadillo. He really did on his forehead.
One of those dogs.
Yeah, I can't remember what kind of dog. I was thinking about that a while, and I can't remember the name of the dog. Bloodhound has it, but there's other types of dogs who have a whole bunch of, wrinkly furrows in the forehead. And I wish I could remember that, but it's appropriate. But the thing that I not only remember about Dick Cheney, about the furrows in his forehead, that his lips, when he spoke, always pursed towards the left of his mouth. So he never spoke directly to you. He spoke out of the side of his mouth. And if you remember growing up, as a kid, you used to hear, at least I heard my parents say from time to time, he's always speaking out, the side of his mouth. Well, I basically understood what that meant. He wasn't telling the truth. But with Dick Cheney, it's habitual. He always talks out of the left side of his mouth. And if you look at some of the caricatures that have been done on Dick Cheney over the years, as well as the regular videos, he always speaks out of the left side of his mouth, and he never looks at you directly.
Right.
Okay. So right there, the guy's not telling the truth.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. So that pretty much ties it up for me tonight, Kiwi. I hope people do watch this again. If you missed anything, or you question anything, or would like to have some more information about a particular subject, be sure to note that in the comments section, and either myself or Nigel will answer it for you. We'll lead you to the information. We don't want to leave you in the dark. We want you to have as much knowledge as we have, if not more. Okay? Because when we're dead and gone, somebody's got to take over this game. This game is not going to be over in a short period of time, believe me. But in the end, only truth will prevail.
That's right. Now I have one last question for you, Rick. This is a pull out of the hat twister. You don't even know. You don't know what I'm going to ask, and what it is.
I can't.
So my question is, since we're talking about predicting the weather and so forth, prediction of the future and so forth, weather warfare, what's your, this is my final question to you, what's your take on the future in weather warfare here? Your last prediction on this or whatever.
It's going to happen. I mean, it's going to happen.
That sounded like an easy way of saying, nice generalized out.
It's very generic, but it's true. It's happening now. It'll happen in the future. But is there going to be something as catastrophic and mind-blowing as 9/11? And my answer to that question is yes. Something will catastrophically be equivalent to a 9/11. I know it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't happen, but I know it's going to happen because there's not enough people aware to circumvent that. The more people that are aware, the better chances we have to circumvent that. Okay.
Yep. Actually, I'll just chip in here on that. Is that going back to what we were talking about, reality? That is a very, very good point you made there, because as more people become aware, that becomes the prevailing reality, and that circumvents something like that happening. So when you get a greater, and this is what I've been trying to put my finger on this and say it in such a way that people could understand it, but I think this is actually sort of hitting right on it, and that is that if you get a prevailing reality change, then it circumvents some disaster happening. When the prevailing reality is oh, well, we're going to have a disaster, it's a different viewpoint than one of, well, we could, but let's change that. That's a different prevailing reality, and it's the one that we need to get.
That's correct. And that's what's referred to as what's called the tipping point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The tipping point is where 1/10 of the population, 1/10 of the population can change the reality. Okay? So if you have a population, let's say of 100, you got a small village as an example. All you need is 10 people to agree to a specific reality, and the other 90% will agree with that, and that'll change reality. Okay? Now, that can be done by nation, and that can be done by the planet. But 1/10 of the population can change the reality of this entire freaking planet. It's already in the works. It's been in the works it's been in the works for 70 years now, ever since 1950. When LRH came out with the book Dianetics and Scientology developed, reality began to change. And guess what? Even though we've had to go through catastrophic events and a lot of bloodshed, the fact of the matter is it could have been a lot worse. And the fact of the matter is it's getting better. Now, we haven't reached the tipping point yet. But you and I and other like-minded people are working towards that goal of reaching the tipping point. We will make this world a better place in which to live. It will happen.
Hallelujah.
It will happen.
Yeah.
As I've told you before, that's my whole and sole purpose of living in this world. I'm not going to go out anytime soon. As far as I know, I've got another 500 years of life to go. I really do. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. If I die during the interim, so be it. I'll come back next lifetime and do the same damn thing all over again until we reach that tipping point where things change in this world for the better. It's my purposes in life. I've never forgotten it. Yeah. So, don't take me any further, please.
Well, let's leave it at that then for tonight, and we'll wrap up if that's all good with you, Rick.
Yeah, that's good. Go ahead and end it, and then I'll converse with you on a little bit more information.
Yeah, okay. So hold the line. So thanks
Sure.
everybody for thank you, Rick, for your invaluable information there, and thanks to all the people who are loyal supporters for Weather Wars International and some of our other interesting pages. Between Rick and I, we have a whole bunch of them. So hang in there. There's going to be much more of this. We're much more news that we're going to be bringing in the coming weeks and months and so forth.